Thank you for inviting me here today to your meeting. You all are very important partners to APAH and our work and have been over the course of years. So it's a pleasure to be able to give you an update in terms of what's been going on recently at APAH and a little bit of a preview of what I think the next few years holds for us. I did prepare a brief PowerPoint just to share some images that might be helpful for people to orient them to the organization. So give me a second while I share the screen and hopefully you can see it when it comes live. Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Okay. So the quick one pager about APAH is we're a mission-driven nonprofit that was founded in 1989 by 4 Arlington families. And since then, since the 80s, we've now grown to over 2,000 apartment homes, much of that within the boundaries of Arlington, the 26 square miles that is Arlington. But we have 1,400 units in active pre-development that are either under construction today or that have funding and ready to close. And I think one of the big updates is that the name Arlington Partnership for Affordable Housing is a little bit of a misnomer because we now, since 2017, serve the broader DMV community. And really the genesis for that was affordable housing is a regional crisis and the affordability crisis doesn't stop at our boundary. So we really felt called to step up with kind of our mission and our staff and all the support we had to do more, especially in Northern Virginia. We are focused, affordable housing means a lot of things to people, but we really try to stay focused on the 30 to 60% of the area median income. So the folks struggling the most, we feel, and then the numbers bear it out in the research with the housing affordability and cost burden crisis that we all have. You know, when people talk about an affordable housing crisis, sometimes that discussion ranges all the way up to really people who are making middle income, and the missing middle you hear a lot about in the news these days. Where we are focused is in rental housing in the 30 to 60% of area median income, as well as we set aside 10% of our units for special partnerships to help folks who can live in affordable housing, but maybe have experienced domestic violence, or perhaps were homeless for a period of time. So they may come to us through partnerships with Doorways for Women and Children, from Pathways, which is another group that works in kind of homeless prevention. The group ASPAN, which I know has been rebranded now. So we have some partnerships with other nonprofits so that we can be the landlord, and they identify the residents, they give them wraparound services, and then they can come live in an APAH property and live independently and successfully. And we are more than just affordable housing developers. We have a robust group that focuses on creating opportunities and pathways for individuals to have both stability, to make sure that we prevent people from being evicted, right? That's a really big focus of ours, especially during COVID and now coming out of COVID. And then offering opportunities. And I'm going to share with you some of our asset and wealth building initiatives that we are moving forward with today. And we are deeply committed to racial justice. And if you go to the APAH website, we have our statement and commitment to racial justice that we published last year. And we have some standing groups of both staff and board that work on moving forward. You know, how do we try to dismantle the legacy of racism in housing? And what are the proactive steps we're doing to do that? Our mission is threefold: to develop, preserve, and own high quality, affordable homes. That's what we're mostly known for, I think, for, you know, a lot of people know APAH and that from that vantage point. The second piece, the promoting stability and opportunity for residents. We have a whole group that does resident services that you all are familiar with. You help us and partner with us on a lot of those programs where we're trying to serve the 200 seniors that live at APAH properties, for example. So in the 2,000 homes that we have around 4,000 residents that live in APAH today, of which 1,500 of those are people under the age of 25, and around 250 of those are seniors. So we, when we're trying to promote stability and opportunity for our residents, it's with that in mind that we have different cohorts that have different needs. What are the right services to engage, that subset of the APA community? So we're really focused on that. And then lastly, advocacy and policy work. And this is, how do we work in the larger ecosystem with other nonprofits, with Arlington County, with regional conveners around how do we get to solving the big affordable housing problem beyond just what APA can do. We can work in partnership to do it. Our leadership, we have a 26-person board of directors, many of which are Arlingtonians. But when we went regional, we also expanded the scope of who we have on the board. Our board chair today is a gentleman by the name of Matt Birnbaum, who lives in Lion Village. No, I'm sorry, Lion Park. Sorry about that. That was a mistake. But he is also the chief investment officer at Avalon Bay Communities that's headquartered in Ballston. So the really nice thing for APA is, we have a cross section of people like Matt and people like Rich Jordan. Rich Jordan lives in the Barcroft neighborhood. And he has 3 kids, all went through APS schools. So he's, a member of the community as well. Kiva Dennis, Kai Reynolds, he is Chief Development Officer at JBG Smith that brought Amazon to the region. But we also have former principals. We have Tani Talento, who's a former Arlington Public Schools board chair. We have John Green, who is focused on helping people of color who are in the process of getting their single family home foreclosed on a national basis. So we have a really interesting cross section of Arlington experts, commercial real estate experts, education experts, all working together on this board. And we meet 4 times a year. Tonight is our first in-person board meeting since March of 2020. So I'm really excited that we get to see each other again. And then we have 8 committees of the board that work in addition to the board meetings to move the work forward according to, their expertise.
Carmen, we have a question that's come in.
Yes.
What percentage of your apartments are larger than 1 bedroom so that they can accommodate families?
I'd say I don't have the stats for the portfolio off the top of my head, but I will tell you every new building we've built in the last decade has been 80% 2 and 3 bedrooms. We really have a bias for family size units because the market isn't delivering it. And with the exception of in our portfolio, we have, and I could skip ahead to that, a view of, we are starting senior projects, which I think is very relevant to this. So let me show you a map. And before I get there, this is the senior leadership team today. We've changed a lot. 4 of our members of senior leadership identifies as people of color. That is part of our commitment to making sure APA represents the people we serve, because that is the demographic of the people that live in the APA portfolio. And I'm really excited about some of the leaders. Some of them have been here a while. Kim Painter, you guys may know, she's been here 15 years. Kelly, our COO, has been here 9 years. I've been here 11 years. Mike has been here 8 years. So we're, but we are able to, we've attracted, you see 2 gentlemen on the screen, Mark Von Jackson, who heads up our resident services. He's on the bottom far right. He is an adjunct professor at the School of Social Work at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, that we recruited here a year ago to create innovation around resident impact. And then the gentleman to his left, Garrett Jackson, same last name, it's not related. He came to us from a nonprofit in Maryland. So really bringing some new voices. I think it's important for Arlington to learn from other jurisdictions. I think, Arlington does, I am very proud of who Arlington is, and we're cutting edge when it comes to affordable housing. But I do think bringing in some new voices into APA has been really exciting for me and for the organization over the course of the last year. This is a map of our current properties in Arlington. You'll see 17 of them are operational today, and they're all over Arlington. Sometimes you hear that there's a concentration of housing and it's only along Columbia Pike and others, and Maureen remembers this debate well from the Affordable Housing Master Plan. We are balanced, 50% north, 50% south, and you'll see a lot of our pipeline, the next two that are delivering are in the RB corridor, right? The Twilliger Place, 160 units, delivers at Virginia Square. We got Core and Shell, and those are going to be 160 new apartment homes across the street from the Giant, 2 doors down from the barbecue place that everyone knows and loves. That project is coming to fruition, as well as Boston Station, which is across from the Boston Metro, and that's the CUMC project. In addition to this, we are delivering one senior affordable housing project in Loudoun County in the Sterling area. That's 100 units of mostly, when we do senior buildings, they're more geared towards 1 bedrooms. 2/3 1 bedrooms, 1/3 2 bedrooms. So that's in the Sterling area. If anyone knows of friends, maybe you all could help us. This is where you can help me. If you all have a sister organization in Loudoun County, or really in Fairfax and other places where people may be interested, we are starting to take applications now, but could use some help getting the word on the street since we're new to Loudoun. We also have another project, another senior project that's under construction today in Fairfax County, near the Van Dorn Metro Station, in kind of the Springfield area. That's 150 units of senior housing. And there it's a 6-acre site, and we just got, we're gonna have, it's a lot of outdoor space, bocce, greenhouses, pergolas. It's gonna be a real campus setting, and APA's never had, because Arlington is so land constrained. Our buildings are typically 1 acre is what we can get, and it's a much more intense land use pattern that we have here in the Arlington area. But in Loudoun and in Fairfax, we do have the ability to do kind of a different type of product. So I don't know, maybe when we open these products, if you are ever interested in seeing what senior housing looks like, we're happy to host an open house so that you all see what that work is looking like. So like I said, our first one in Loudoun delivers, in the next 60 days, and then Oakwood will deliver at the June of next year in Fairfax. We recently completed Queens Court in Roslyn, and that is a 12-story building across from the new high school that APS built, the replacement for HB Woodlawn, and took it, down into Roslyn. And in conjunction with, there was a lot of increases in density that went to help facilitate the creation of a new fire station and retail. So we were part of a big land use and upzoning that happened there. We just delivered that last June. And that's really, our regular model of family housing, of which 80% is 2 or 3 bedrooms. And then we bought our first property in Maryland and finished renovating that in Silver Spring. And that's APA's first 100% Section 8 property, housing choice voucher. So everyone we serve there makes 30% of the area median income or below, and it's family size, mostly 3 bedrooms there. So that was something that's really hard for us to do, is compete to preserve projects like that. But we were able to increase the affordability by 40 years in the process. And under construction today, like I said, we have Twilliger Place, Loudoun View, Oakwood, and then Boston Station. We have a big real estate team now that's grown to 11 people in the last few years. It used to be just 3 of us, but with the expansion and the need to really step up, our board allowed us to grow. APA is now 45 people strong. So we've hired 20 people during COVID. Some of them replacement positions, but a lot of it was growth. And I mentioned our new leadership in resident services that Marquand Jackson led. We are much more focused on how do we get to scale in resident services too. So I talked about an 11-person real estate team. We have a 14-person resident services team. And at the start of COVID, we had 4. And we realized when COVID hit, everyone was, all of a sudden really faced with existential, problems around losing employment, and families that were otherwise getting by, working, to be able to stay in the DMV and pay rent. All of a sudden, we're told they had to stay home because their hours were dropped. So by increasing the resident services staff, we were able to work and keep, APA's portfolio of 2,000 units, all of a sudden overnight went to 450 families who couldn't pay the rent. So we were able to work with this team of 14 to get all 450 families in line to get federal aid, and all but 4 families worked with us. So we were really, that was door knocking, that was weekend meetings, that was translation services to just make sure we could try to keep people, you can't have a pandemic with a stay-home order and have people not have homes. And that was really at the intersection of what we want to do. We extended our moratorium for evictions through the end of last year, and really are only now getting back to where we're kind of going back to our pre-pandemic practices of everyone's paying rent. All the federal programs have wound down at this point. So we are now, if your job hasn't come back, we're working with you. Okay, well, can you pay rent? Do you need help with employment? Do you need help with daycare? So that you can go out on an interview. We are now having those conversations with our residents so that we can keep people housed. But it's beyond that. It's also looking at the future, right? And so to give you a sense for some of the things we have on the table, workforce and economic mobility, we've received our first grant to do a pilot IDA program, individual development account, where we're going to have a cohort of probably 100 people demonstration projects so that every dollar you save, we will match. We are still working through the details, but potentially up to $5 for every dollar saved, up to a certain cap. And then when you sign up for the program, you would set up a goal for either home ownership, starting your own business, or going back to school to help you in terms of economic mobility. We also, on children, youth, and family, I mentioned we have 1,400 kids that live at the APAH property. We received a gift from Avalon Bay Communities at the end of last year to launch something called the Next Generation Fund. And that is, how do we work with every cohort of youth, starting from learning to read to STEM and girls who know how to code and robotics, all the way up to college access, and really have a whole host of programs that we can offer youth at every age group in partnership with groups like George Mason, the Raspberry Pi Foundation, Best Buy, and start programs throughout our 17 unit portfolio, so that we have community rooms that you guys have been in before. You should see those community rooms active at all times, with partners coming and going, activating and giving APAH kids a chance to, after school, have all of the enriching programs that my kids are lucky enough and other people's kids are lucky enough to have exposure to. The whole purpose of the Next Gen Fund was igniting passion and exposure for our youth to things that will open up their eyes and give them opportunities. Housing stability, we talked about, that's about keeping people housed, eviction prevention, adult health and wellness. And these are some of the we have senior programs that you all know. Venus Burgess from APAH is doing everything from, healthy cooking classes to grandpads, pilots, so we can give out grandpads to some of our seniors so they can communicate with their grandkids and get trained on that. We're doing emergency kits for seniors, 200 of those that Avalon Bay is helping us with, so that, there's water, there's snacks, there's flashlights, trying to get people ready for, the summer months. And you never know, with hurricanes and others, we lose power. So, just as well as vaccines, we had on-site vaccination clinics during the pandemic, and we are now going to be doing a big push now that the under fives was just approved to get our kids vaccinated. And then yesterday we just learned CORS is an accreditation that affordable housing developers can get. That's kind of a gold standard in the resident services work. We've tried for many, many years, and last time we found that we finally were accredited under Mark Wan's leadership, and it's a 5-year accreditation that really was years in the making. So we're excited about that ability to now be in that peer group and learn from others who are doing the work with us. Community impact.
We've got a couple of questions.
Sure.
The first one is, are there any disability initiatives that you guys have going on? The comment is that they've heard from the Disability Commission that they're really lacking countywide. So
That's a great question. And yes, we definitely exceed kind of in terms of building buildings, what the requirements are in terms of building accessible units. And like at the Twilliger place that we are bringing forward to completion in the next few weeks, that's a half the building is designed to be universal design, so easier for people with disabilities to live at Twilliger Place. And we are trying to do that, and then all of our senior properties actually have that as well. We are also working with partners such as our Stomping Ground that works with people with intellectual disabilities, and they are working at 2 of our properties now where we are able to house a lot of the purpose of that nonprofit is to help like it was started by parents whose children have an intellectual disability, maybe nonverbal autistic, and they were worried, these parents, that they were going to die someday and there would be no one to take care of their children. And so they started this nonprofit. They came to APAH and they said, will you partner with us? So at Gilliam Place, we have set aside, or we're working with them, and they've now proven their model works by housing folks who are now kids able to move out of their parents' home. They live with an aide, and we get vouchers from the state. So it's a 2-bedroom apartment where someone with an intellectual disability will have a roommate, and the state will pay for the rent, but it allows someone with an intellectual disability to live independently outside of their parents' home. And it gives their parents the peace of mind of knowing, they've got access to services and that we are their partner in making that model successful. So certainly more to do, and I'm open to suggestions if there are other nonprofits we need to start looking to work with, but very interested in that work as well.
Okay, the other question is, what is the Raspberry Pi Foundation?
It is a group that teaches young children coding and other kind of STEM enrichment activities. And it is, our way of bringing in expertise to showcase to our youth. And, we also had done like Amazon Future Engineers when Amazon first came to town. But Raspberry Pi is one that George Mason University was working with and recommended. So we kind of took Mason's advice that this was kind of a best practice.
I would also add that Raspberry Pi is the name of a very simple, very inexpensive computer that people can use to build robots or program in all kinds of different ways. So that's where the name comes from.
Oh, okay. Well, I will, this is good. It's a good question because it's going to force me to, I was going to try to pull up their website, but I'm going to mess up if I try to do that right now. But did I mess up our screen by doing that? Okay. And I think I'm on my last slide, so I will just share this really quickly, as in like the sorts of things when we talk about advocacy. I think because of the proximity of Arlington to the federal government, there's an opportunity for us to convene and bring in people like Senator Warner, the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, Senator Kane, to see what affordable housing looks like in practice. There are a lot of federal tools that they control, that they can expand, but sometimes people need to know who they're serving with these policies, and inviting them to a property, bringing residents in with us to tell their story, how impactful it is to have housing or voucher programs or other safety net funded. We are, we do 1 or 2 of those a year, I would say. And that is also kind of part of our mission. And with that, thank you for supporting APAH and the work that we do. We are really appreciative of your commitment. So I will stop talking now and stop sharing screen so we can see each other again.
Okay, so the next question, there's a comment here that Pax Baker, who does the really elaborate Christmas lights, uses Raspberry Pi computers. So what are APAH's thoughts on the missing middle housing study?
You know, we are supportive of it. I mean, I think the reality is, even though you know, we build multifamily housing, which isn't really going to be served by the changes that are being moved forward in missing middle. You know, I've lived in Arlington 27 years and bought my first house for $200,000. I couldn't afford to live in Arlington if there wasn't a price point for single family home ownership. I made equity from that that is going to allow me to send my kids to college. That's how I got to college. Is my parents came to this country and had access to, you know, through the grace of God, coming here from Latin America, got lucky and bought their first home. And that's how they ultimately were able to retire and send 3 kids to school. I think pathways to home ownership so that Arlington isn't just, you know, the price of entry in North Arlington is getting, you know, it's an average single family home across the country of over $1 million, right? Of which in North Arlington could be upwards $2-3 million for McMansions of 8,000 square foot homes that 2 people are living in. That is happening everywhere. And I think being creative with new typology to create within the box of a single family home duplexes, triplexes that are going to give more people that middle income band an opportunity to have home ownership and stay as part of this community is a good thing. And 75% of our land area is single family home zoned in Arlington. I think, you know, it's for me, it's, you know, an equity issue, right? You know, are we, and we know that a lot of our zoning historically has been based on our racist history as a country and as a commonwealth. So from a racial equity perspective, I also feel like it very much aligns with our values as an organization to support it.
Okay, next question is, can you talk about the sources of your funding?
Yes, we have a traditional first mortgage on all of our properties, which is what rent helps us pay for in addition to operating expenses. But to keep rents low, there's also a need for equity, and a lot of our equity comes from banks like Bank of America, Capital One, and others. And they, when they put equity into an affordable housing project, they get a tax deduction for the next 10 years that they get from the federal government. And that is traditionally been 2/3 of the stack. And then the final, the gap piece, which Maureen is very well aware of, she was our partner at the county lends us money. So the county collects money from developers like Amazon and others who are doing big developments, and they create a loan fund. And then they're able to loan it to groups like ours to be the last money in the deal to get the gap to work. And then in exchange for that, we promise to keep the housing affordable for upwards of 75 to 99 years, so that the county knows once they've invested with us, they don't have to worry about it anymore. That is affordable forever, basically. And they're a loan, so they get a piece of our cash flow to repay it back. And then when our first mortgage goes away in 30 years, we can refinance. You know, the first mortgage goes away, and if we have to do capital rehabs on the building, we can put a little more debt on it and do any rehabs that we may need. So it's a very sustainable model. It's not public housing. There's sometimes a misconception of what this is. This is a commercially, you know, it's a successful model since the 80s that we've had nationally, that this is how Arlington has produced affordable housing. And it really allows us to maintain high quality affordable housing because we're constantly replenishing our capital reserves and holding ourselves to, you know, Arlington holds us to a pretty high standard. Since they're our lender, they can do 100% inspection like they've done recently at a couple of our properties. And so, you know, the county's program is, I think, best in class in how they've designed it. And, you know, and it's a very compliance driven program.
We've got a comment here. Thank you for providing us with a good affordable house. So sounds like we've got at least one person in the audience today that's living in APAH housing.
Oh, nice to hear. Thank you.
Comment here that Danielle Johnson is a great help to ANV, that she's referred more than 20 people to us so far.
Oh, thank you. I will let her know that you all thank her and mean a lot to her.
Yep. And another comment that we love Venus as well. That we've been included in senior socials and other APA events to help with our outreach.
Yeah, she's wonderful. She leads our senior initiatives, but it'll mean a lot to them that I'm able to convey back your words of support.
And on the disability issue, there's a comment here that Melwood might be one to look into for disability housing, that they have a project proposed in 22202.
Right. I have not touched base with them in a little while. We had kind of earlier on in their journey. We were trying to be supportive of them, but it's probably a good time for me to check back in. So thank you for that.
Question here, can we get a copy of your slides?
Yes, I will send that to Anita after the meeting.
And how does APA manage the maintenance on buildings and apartments so that you don't get into the problem of, falling behind and buildings becoming less habitable?
Right. And I think, this is one where, especially during COVID, when, for a while there, people didn't want maintenance people in their homes, right? For obvious reasons. And we had gone to more of an emergency basis for a little while. It's really important to us. So we just got through the county inspection process of 2 of our properties, but we are doing for our own account as owners, 100% inspection of our buildings so that we know kind of as leaders that we have a third-party property manager, SL Nussbaum out of Norfolk. And it's our way of making sure that we are all aligned, and the standard we're using is a federal standard that the county was adopting in their inspections. So that's one element of it. We are also, we have, obviously the first line of attack is if there's an issue, a complaint, we have a 1-800 number that goes to a regional executive that elevates it above kind of what happens at the ground level to make sure there's kind of accountability. So we promote that number in our resident newsletters. We're creating magnets that we can put on refrigerators everywhere so that people know where they can go if there's an issue that's not getting resolved at the property level. And candidly, our resident services team, since we grew it from 4 to 14, we have resident services now on site at any property with over 100 units. And then even the scattered sites have a resident service coordinator. So typically, if there's something going on there, because we have this APA representation at the staffs at the properties, that will also get elevated to me or to our COO when we can call our property manager and say, hey, this, the regular chain of command maybe didn't catch this. We want to take a look at what's going on here. So we really try to have quality at the forefront. And ultimately it's, we do surveys of our residents. So every property, at least once every 3 years, receives an anonymous survey that they can do around the quality of their housing. So we look at that as well. And then we recently established a resident council. So we took applications from all 2,000 households could have applied to be part of the council. We had 15 people step up from our 17 properties, more or less, and they meet the first or second Saturday of every month. This is in month 4. And their focus is not around maintenance. Their focus is around program and activation, but they are also have said that, they will give us feedback, right? They're like, hey, FYI. And so I've met with them personally. I went last month and said, okay, tell me, if you had one piece of advice for me, what would it be? And it is an opportunity for our resident leadership to interact with me. Our head of asset management is going to visit, I think in August. They're going on a bus tour of the APA properties together. So we are just trying to be more visible to our residents so that, to your point, is a really long way of saying it, but I think the more they see us out in the community, the better relationship we have. I'm hoping that will prevent us from ever being in a position where we don't feel comfortable with the quality housing that we have. And ultimately, if a problem comes up, we will address it. And, we're not perfect. And I don't want to project that we are perfect. we're going to have problems happen because, when you have 2,000 apartments, something may fall through the cracks. And I just, I think bringing the mindset that, if that happens, Carmen and our board of directors is expecting that we're going to address it in real time.
Okay, earlier.
Add something to that, Gary, can I add something?
Sure.
And what I want to say about it is, well, many of you know that I used to, and Carmen has mentioned that I used to work in the housing division for Arlington County. And so part of this maintenance issue is good planning right up front. So like when Carmen said that the county makes loans to the developers to help these properties happen, we look at what their operating budgets are projected to be and making sure that they have enough money built in there, because these maintenance things, they are not free. And it costs a lot of money to maintain properties, as you probably all know. And so upfront planning to make sure that there's good practices going so that the money is going to be there when something happens, it is very important.
Thank you, Maureen. That's a really great point to share.
The next question was, you had earlier mentioned Section 8 housing. Can you define what that is?
Sure, it is a federal program and candidly has been kind of underfunded at a national level, where sometimes it takes like 8 years to get a voucher. And that's when it's really a rent subsidy that if you're unable to pay rent, but you fall into, certain income classes, and that's really 30% of the area median income or below, in which case, an individual who's trying to live in Arlington for $20,000 or $15,000 a year, or has a disability that doesn't allow them to have an income. Programs like that, a safety net program, give you the ability to have a voucher that the federal government gives you, and you can, rent an apartment really theoretically anywhere. If it's given to you directly, you can even take it with you. If you moved from Silver Spring to New York, and the federal government will pay the market rent associated for that 1 bedroom or the 2 bedroom, and you're just paying 30% of your income. If your income is 0, you pay 0. If your income is, it scales up to no more than 30%, so you're not rent burdened. The problem is there are not enough of those vouchers, and it's an 8-year wait list. Arlington has its own housing grant program that's sort of a mirror image, that they spend about $9 million a year funding, which is a very, very generous program. They don't have those programs anywhere else in Virginia. Arlington has it, and it's for certain folks. And Maureen, what are the parameters? Who can get a housing grant in Arlington?
It has to do, well, first, it's income, and then I think it's limited to families with children, but I'm not sure if that's been changed or not. But one thing I did want to clarify, because in the question it asked is Section 8 public housing? And the answer to that is no, Section 8 is not public housing. Section 8 enables people to live in market rate housing. And that's one of the great things about it, really. So it's not just affordable properties that take Section 8. It's a lot of the regular landlords with just commercial properties around. They can also accept Section 8, and so it helps people to live in regular market rate housing as well.
And it's a really big political part of the agenda that I think, the administration was trying to move forward on, is how do they expand? Because people keep talking about how do we get out of the affordable housing crisis? APAH can't build enough affordable housing to meet everyone's need, but the combination of building more plus vouchers that could be deployed in market rate units is all kind of, it's a different tool, but it's an important tool. But that's really at the federal level, and why it's important to get our senators here to understand, you know, what we're doing, but then for us to kind of work together to have hopefully that tool expanded. And then to support Arlington in this kind of mirror program. It's not as robust as the Housing Choice Voucher Program, but it's a fantastic tool that Arlington has in place.
Next question, are there other properties that you can acquire in Arlington or land that you can build on? And do you work with other affordable housing entities?
Yes, we our senior project that we're developing in Loudoun was with another nonprofit that had never done a deal in Virginia. So they had a site under contract. They invited us to help them. So we are always happy to work with the other nonprofits. We're working with churches who have land, like the Central United Methodist Church or the Presbyterian Church that we just finished. So those are really important mission partnerships that can help a church. A lot of times churches have a lot of capital improvements that they want to make. Maybe their congregation isn't as large as it was 100 years ago. So they want to change what their program looks like. We could help redevelop that land, have housing on top and a new sanctuary at the bottom, like at Arlington Presbyterian Church. So we really think that those are some of the most important partnerships in Arlington where you can have density and build on top of things.
Approximately how long is the wait list to get into one of your properties for a single resident?
That's a really great question. I'd say it can be sizable, you know, a year and a half to get in. And unfortunately, the best opportunities are when we open a new building, like Twilliger Place that's leasing up right now. Next year, when we're opening up Central United Methodist Church, because the existing properties, you know, we will have one or two openings that come up at any given time. And through the county website, there should be at every month refresh on all the inventory across all of the affordable, all the 8,000 units in the portfolio, so that people can scan where there are units available and the phone number for that leasing office.
Question, do the maintenance staff live on site like in the good old days, or are you contracted with various companies?
We are third-party contracted, but we do have some maintenance workers that live on our properties. Not all of them, but that's a really good question. That is the ideal, right? If someone's like living in the community, and so I will actually, that's a nice follow-up question because I can ask internally.
Does the county do periodic inspections of your buildings?
Yes, they do periodic inspections, and then this year they picked two properties at random, or you know, they decided and did 100% unit inspection at like 300 units. I think around 300 units.
And I guess this next comment relates to the Section 8 housing. It says low assets, low income, and 65 plus or disabled. So,
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, that was the Arlington Housing Grant. My apologies.
Oh,
I put
okay.
the link in there. Sorry, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for getting us the information in real time. This is a team effort.
Yep. And I don't see any additional questions. So I don't know if anybody else has questions or comments.
You know, this is Anita. This is so great, Carmen, to have you visit with us. Maybe you should tell us why the Arlington Partnership for Affordable Housing is so unique, and the history I think is worth maybe talking about a little bit. Maybe Maureen, who knows really all kinds of federal and national other comparable communities, might be able to also say that we've got something special here in Arlington with APAH, and anything that either of you would like to talk about the beginning and why we do feel our organization here is unique.
Yeah, Maureen, why don't you go ahead, because you even have more history with APAH than I do.
Wow, yeah. You know, I think Arlington is really fortunate to have our affordable housing developers, and it is an industry that's nationwide, you know, this thing. And I would say that we are on the cutting edge, you know, of the industry because of the county's commitment a lot. You know, they've put a lot of resources into it. And the fact that we have the housing grant subsidy, like Carmen mentioned, there are very few communities that have something like that. And it really helps us a lot to be able to do that. The challenges that we have here, you know, because we're a landlocked county, and you know, there's just not a lot of land to go. And so I think we've done a lot of buying older properties and either, you know, renovating them and adding density, or demolishing them and building up. You know, that is a particular model to be able to do that. And sometimes people are against higher density, but if you think about it, the land is so expensive. And if you've got a piece of land and it's worth $10 million and you're putting, you know, 10 units on it, then each unit has a lot of big share of that land. But if you can put 100 units on it, then the amount that each unit has to pay for land is less. And so that helps. And also what Carmen mentioned about partnering, like with churches and other organizations, to kind of, you know, make use of a property like that. That's pretty cutting edge stuff. And then I will also just give a shout out to the values of the Arlington community itself, because you probably all heard the word NIMBY, you know, not in my backyard. And a lot of communities are, you know, fight having affordable housing. And so we're fortunate to have housing advocates and people who really care about the other people in our community. And so the community is generally, you know, supportive of the effort and supportive of the county making these loans, and tries to, you know, understand the program and make sure that, you know, all our neighbors can live in Arlington to the extent that they can. And so all of that, I think, is makes us a special community.
Next question is, how do you enforce the number of people living in your apartments?
We are very compliance focused. We can only have two people per bedroom, and we enforce that, right? You know, if a maintenance worker came in and there was a ton of mattresses everywhere and it was obvious that we had an overcrowding problem, we'd have to say to that family, you need to move to a larger unit, and, you know, or have someone leave to, you know, stay in compliance.
Okay, next question is, what are your thoughts on the Amazon contribution to affordable housing? They say it seemed a little low to them, but they don't know about all the bonus density calculations and everything else.
Yeah, and I know there was some discussion publicly around, was that the right amount or others? You know, I do give the county a lot of credit for negotiating with Amazon around their contributions, you know, globally, in including kind of the cash payments. But you know, Amazon's also got a $2 billion affordable housing fund, half of which is going to be spent in the greater Arlington, DC area. And so, you know, I think it's viewed in the housing community as a real, it's beyond the cash proffers. Like, they help preserve Barcroft with Jair Lynch, right? They, you know, in 60 days cut a below market rate loan of 150 million-ish or 140, I forget the final number, that the county could never have come up with. So it's like, if you think of it holistically, what are they contributing to affordable housing? They didn't have to launch a $2 billion fund and step up to try to make preservation. So I think none of us knew what to expect when they arrived, but their focus on housing has been real from my experience. And we're working with them in Fairfax. They're helping us build 2 towers in Tyson's Corner, 500 units, that they are lending us below market interest rate money to make it happen. And no one's been able to figure out Tyson's without that kind of investment.
Okay, next question is, have you ever considered green roofs on any of your projects?
Yeah, we're doing that in some projects where we have planted green roofs. We have where we need to, I think we're trying to add is also solar as well now. So how you combine green roofs with solar panel on top at an angle, so you can do both on like small roofs, since we're, you know, usually very skinny, taller buildings. So that's where we're going to be spending a lot of energy, as well as just being greener in general. Like, how do we make our projects greener with biophilic plantings coming off the buildings, or, you know, gardens, and incorporating even, you know, inside the building, some green features.
Okay, and just to be clear, the fund that Amazon had set up, that was 2 billion with a B?
With a B.
Not billion with an
Yeah.
M. Okay.
That's a good point to clarify there, Gary. Well, Carmen, Maureen, thanks for your participation today. This is our president, and we are so lucky at A&B to have Maureen in a volunteer role. One of the things that I think we have in common with APAH and so many other good organizations in Arlington is that these are nonprofit, volunteer-based organizations where, going back to 1989, in the case of APAH, you had a few residents who said, we live in a wonderful place and we want to make sure that it's possible for others to live as well here. So what distinguishes, though, when I listen to Carmen and how wonderful your experience has been there, and you did follow Nina Janapool for many years, a great leader there, and your board is terrific. You've done such a great job yourself. In this 1 year, you've just gone leaps and bounds. We did not know, I don't think, about Silver Spring and Loudoun and Fairfax County, and you are putting out your roots beyond Arlington for sure. I think it just shows you that nonprofit groups really do benefit when you have strong leadership, professionally run organizations that understand how to make sense out of the business challenges. There's nothing more difficult than what you guys are doing, and we really appreciate your help. Is there anything, Maureen, you'd like to say before we close?
Well, maybe a kind of a little personal story, because, you know, I used to do housing work. I used to live out in Washington State, and I worked for the state of Washington. And I had a friend out there, her name was Alice, and she was younger than me. And you know, as I turned out, when I came here, and as Amazon started to come to Arlington, it turns out that my friend Alice is now the community, I don't know what they call it. She's the manager of community relations for Amazon. And so I was really excited about that. And there's a housing person who is the head of Amazon community relations. And she told me how she got involved with that. She was working for a nonprofit organization that was involved with low-income youth and homeless youth in the streets of Seattle. And Amazon was building their new campus in an area that had been kind of run down, and it was all being gentrified. And so Alice went to them and said, hey, you know, these are your neighbors, these kids that are out on the street, you know, you know, how about you pony up and give us some, you know, a grant? And they said, oh, we don't believe in that kind of philanthropy, but, you know, but we will establish kind of a training program for kids. And they, you know, so they brought kids in and, you know, was sort of an employment program, which was a good thing. And then they tried to get Alice to come and work for them, and she didn't want to do it. And so later on, as Amazon kind of matured in their own thinking, and they thought, you know, gee, maybe this woman had a good idea, and we would like to hire her to be our person. And so they negotiated something, and that's how all that came about. And so from being an organization that didn't want to give out any grants, you know, to be in an organization that is being a really good partner with them, with Arlington County. And especially I'm thinking of the Barcroft thing, you know, where they're making a huge loan, you know, to help make that happen. And I credit my friend Alice for kind of pushing them in that direction. And then it's just one of those kind of small world stories, you know, so.
And goes to show you that corporations, not saying that Amazon is perfect, but, you know, has become enlightened and certainly requires the community to also step up and say, what do we need here? So
And they can learn.
that's what we are doing. So thanks again. This is Arlington Neighborhood Village. We'll see you all next week. Thanks, Carmen.
Thank you all for the invitation. Be well.